You all know what reality is. And it doesn't have to be explained to you. And if you try to define it, you become a professional philosopher, and you will eventually shrivel up and die. But you know what it is. It's this. So, we are in a very serious condition in the world today. We are trying to make as the goals of life the attainment of pleasures that really exist on paper only. And the chief example of this is lots of money. There are no limits to the amount of money you can make if you're sufficiently clever and sufficiently ruthless. You can go on and on and on and on. But there are very strict limits to the amount of beef you can eat at one meal, to the amount of girls you can give, to whom you can give adequate satisfaction, to the number of houses you can live in, to the amount of clothes you can wear. Then that there is a real limit. So there are limits to what we can enjoy in a material, physical, real sense. Although I must say, when I say real, and I also join with that the word physical and material, the real world is not necessarily physical or material. The ideas that come out of the history of Western culture that we say physical or material, these are purely conceptual. You see, when somebody says, I'm a materialist, and I think there is nothing but material, see, and all the spiritual stuff is just fantasy. The idea of material is itself fantasy.
Reality escapes all concepts. If you say there is a God, that's a concept. If you say there is no God, that's a concept. And Nagarjuna is saying that always your concepts will prove to be attempts to catch water in a sieve, or wrap it up in a parcel. teacher gradually elicits from his participant students what are their basic premises of life. What is your metaphysic? What are your basic assumptions? What real ideas do you operate on as to what is right and what is wrong, what is the good life and what is not? What arguments are you going to argue strongest? Where do you take your stand? The teacher soon finds this out for each individual concerned, and then he demolishes it. He absolutely takes away that person's compass. And so they start getting very frightened and say to the teacher, all right, I see now, of course I can't depend on this, but what should I depend on? And unfortunately, the teacher doesn't offer any alternative suggestions, but simply goes on to examine the question, why do you think you have to have something to depend on? Now this is kept up over quite a period, and the only thing that keeps the students from going insane is the presence of a teacher who seems to be perfectly happy, but is not proposing any ideas. He's only demolishing them. So we get finally, not quite finally, to the void, the shunya. And what then? When you get to the void, there is an enormous and unbelievable sense of relief. That's nirvana. Phew, as I gave a proper English translation of nirvana. Ah, great. So they are liberated, and yet they can't quite say why. So they call it the void. But Nagarjuna went on to say, you mustn't cling to the void. You have to void the void. And so the void of non-void is the great state, as it were, of Nagarjuna's Buddhism. But you must remember that all that has been voided, all that has been denied, are those concepts in which one has hitherto attempted to pin down what is real.